Today I'm going to show you how to set up and balance a body-worn stabilizer with vest, arm and sled. I'll be using the FLYCAM 7300. This can apply to most stabilizers. I myself am used to bigger types of stabilizers, Steadicam types, but this will work for most of them. So the first thing you need to do when you set up your stabilizer is to first put the docking stand. Try and put it in an area that's secure, also quite flat. Today we don't have sandbags, but normally you'd put sandbags right on top of the legs. About 2 of them is good, so that it's really strong and stable. Take all your Allen keys and slot them on, because you're going to be using most of them anyway. So the next thing you need to do is put your sled right on top of the docking bracket. The gimbal will fit here. From then, you're just going to start building up on the actual sled. So we're going to start with the bottom bracket, which is going to have your battery sitting at the very end here. Make sure it's as tight as possible, don't want anything sliding off. Once you've done that, you're going to put the bracket that's made specifically for the monitor. It has the little 4/4 inch screw right there. That goes the other way. Have it about midway for the moment. You might move that along depending on how you need to move your components on top of the sled. Once you've done that, you can put your monitor. Now, the best thing in terms of monitors for stabilizers is to have daylight viewable monitors. Now, they can be very expensive, but at the same time, when you're on a sunny day like this, it's nearly impossible to view monitors that are not daylight viewable. But if you can't afford a higher end monitor, then take a monitor that can easily take HD or SD and that at least has a hood to protect it ever so slightly from the sun. It'll make things a bit easier when you're shooting on days like this. So we're going to put the V-lock plate on at the bottom. Make sure you're going to put it with the V-lock facing this way, so that when you put the battery, you're going to put it from the outside. If you had it the other way around, you might get the top rods, or the top rods here, from the actual monitor bracket that would block you from doing so. This way around, I can slot the battery this way without a problem. And also I can move the other rods if I need to. Now, you need to tighten the V-lock plate using one of your Allen keys. Make sure it's nice and tight so it doesn't slide off. We're going to start putting stuff on top of the sled right now. You have the slot right here, which is for your stabilizer plate, which we're going to take care of a bit later. First, we're going to put the top junction box. Now, this is so that you can power some compatible cameras with the sled, so not everything will work. However, it's also to get the video signal from your camera down onto the sled into your monitor. So that's quite important. So we're going to put some of the power cables and video connectors at the bottom of our sled. Now, these come with FLYCAM. They're going to work with our setup, but they might not work with every camera or every monitor. It all depends on what stabilizer you have. They come with different cables. So we're going to connect the power for the monitor. This one's on the back. So you've got the power cable for the monitor, which goes into your 7.2 volt DC output on the battery plate. You've got your battery plate, which comes on the side on the 14.8 volts. This will power anything that goes up towards the top of the sled. We have the video connector, which goes in video in on your monitor, and AV out on the junction box at the bottom. So on today's configuration, we're not going to actually power anything that's on the camera. So the only connector we're going to be using is the video connector. So we're just going to leave it here until we get the camera on, but that will be ready to go. So we've got our camera built up. What's really important before you put the camera on the stabilizer is to have every single component that you're going to be using on here. Whether it's your mat box, whether it's your battery, even your memory card. If you're using bigger cameras that have bigger cards, putting the card later on will change and upset your balance. So make sure everything is on there to start with. Once you've done that, a good easy way to know where the center of gravity of the camera is to use a rod or your fingers to see where it's shifting. Once you know where your center is, normally you'd mark it on the side of the camera and you'd have your plate roughly, the center of the plate would roughly sit where that marker is, okay? Sometimes you have some cameras that are either very back heavy or very front heavy. So you need to be very careful of those when you actually configure the plate on them. So the stabilizer we have is a slide-on mechanism from the back. So once you have your plate, make sure you put it the right side, because there's the right side and the wrong side. Your little sort of rolling mechanism is on the left, so that when you put it on the top bracket, it will sit correctly and you'll be able to shift back fore and aft balance basically. Make sure to release the bracket so it can slide in. Once you've put your camera on top, you don't have to worry about it sliding on or off because it's blocked. It can't go past a certain point. It's safe from falling. So once it's past that point, which is a safety release, which is on this side, you can sort of take care of the whole balancing act safely without having to worry about anything, whether it's your fore and aft or your side to side. Before we do that, we're just going to connect everything. So get it towards the middle. It's not going to sit right for the moment. You're just going to tighten it up with this screw here. So we're just going to finish with the cabling part. So we're going to connect the BNC cable here to our AV output on the camera, which is on top at the back end here. So now we're ready to put the battery on at the bottom. Make sure it's nice and tight when you slam it in. It's not moving. There's a little switch, which is here. You put it on. Your monitor will go on. Make sure it's on the video output. You can also see the little LED display at the bottom of the junction box right here. That just tells you that the power is going through. Ideally, when you're going to be doing the next part, which is fine-tune balancing, you need to be inside or in a place where there's no wind or no external forces that might change the whole balancing. We got a bit of wind today, but it's going to be fine. We'll be able to work with it. You unblock the actual plate with this little screw there. And you're going to be moving your fore and aft first to see where it sits. So what needs to happen if there's no wind is that it will sit in one spot pretty much, right? If you have a level, you can use a level which you can put on top of your bracket or sometimes even around your monitor to precisely see whether it's level or not. If your side to side is off, we'll go to one side. You have your side to side screw, which is right here at the back of the plate. You can see the actual plate moving sideways when you screw or unscrew this part, which will let you decide where you want it to go. Okay? So too much on the left, so I need to bring back the sled more center. If you find that you're having a hard time balancing the whole components, is that you might have a sled that's too bottom heavy or too top heavy. What you need to do is modify your gimbal in the middle. To do that, you have to have your sled upright. You have to unscrew the gimbal, and then you move it up or down until you find what's called sort of the middle balance, where it's going to sit just in the middle. Okay. Once you've done that, you're going to move it about 2/3 of an inch up, tighten it, and normally when you do the drop test you should get about 2 to 3 seconds, which is good on this type of light sled. Okay, that's a bit too fast, so you get it back up, undo the gimbal again, Move it downwards if it's too fast. Tighten. And then release again. Got about 2 seconds here. I might make it slightly longer. Make sure it's really tight. I've got about 3 seconds. You might have to readjust your fore and aft balance when this happens. But otherwise, once you've done that, your sled will be ready. All right, so this is going to be the vest you're going to be wearing. The first thing you need to know is whether you're right-handed or left-handed. If you're right-handed, your socket block is going to be facing the right side. If you're left-handed, you're going to need to shift it to the left side. So once you know everything's in position, you need to have the right side, normally, or either side really, either the left side or right side, already done. You need to sort of get to know your measurements. At first, when you're going to try on the vest, it might take a few minutes to readjust all the straps to your size. Once you're done, you put one side in, you strap the top part first. Make sure you get the hooks right in there, and then the bottom. Once this part is done, you need to make sure everything is tight. So you bring the hooks back in. Same thing for the bottom. It needs to be center of your body, and it needs to be very tight. Not as tight on the top part here, because you need to be able to breathe. However, it needs to hold you really tightly in the lumbar region right here. So the actual weight of the arm is going to be transferred onto your lumbar region and onto your thighs. This needs to be really tight so that it's nice and secure, and you know you're going to be doing it well, and you're not going to hurt yourself as well. Once that's done and you feel like you're nice and tight in your vest, it's center, you can put the arm on. So again, the arm can be modified depending if you're right-handed or left-handed. The socket block here has been put for a right-handed person, but if you undo the screws on top here and the bottom here, you can switch the socket block so that it can be on the left side. Tighten so that it's relatively straight. So once you're ready with the arm, we're ready to put the sled on, and we're going to see how the arm works with the sled. So I've just put the gimbal right on top of the arm here. So this is where you slot it in. The stabilizer will sit on the opposite side of the arm. You have two knobs on each section of the arm. You can twist them and turn them. If you tighten, the springs will get tighter and you can have the load go higher in terms of height. So you can go really high. As you can see, the springs are taking the whole sled upwards. And you can take it low by loosening the springs. Both sections of the arm need to work together. So one can't be too tight compared to the other. You need to be able to have both at a relatively similar weight range. In terms of how to operate the stabilizer, you keep it on your left side so that you can see the monitor at the bottom. You have your gimbal hand and your operating hand. This is the one that will boom up and down the whole stabilizer. Your operating hand will be the light touches to pan or modify where your camera is facing. This has to be a relatively light touch. At first, you're going to have the stabilizer probably going a bit everywhere because you're not used to it. But your fingers need to have a constant sort of feel on the actual sled, but light enough so that you're not affecting the actual stabilization. So that once you move, it stays straight. But if you let go, it'll go everywhere. So that's why you need those light fingers. Also, the heavier the model in terms of stabilization, the more inertia you're getting, which means that when there's a lot of wind like this, a heavier stabilizer or Steadicam is a lot easier to use. The lighter models tend to be more affected by wind. Otherwise, that's all.